Lewis Hamilton thinks his fall from pole position to fourth place in the Hungarian Grand Prix is simply the reality of where his Mercedes team stands right now. The 7-time world champion took pole at the Hungaroring on Saturday, beating out Max Verstappen by 0.003 seconds. This was his first pole position since the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in 2021. Despite the Mercedes W14 strong pace on a single lap, Hamilton was unable to prevent himself from slipping behind throughout the duration of the Hungarian race. Hamilton has spoken out about the recent results and isn't very happy with Mercedes at the moment. He's even blamed them for the bad results the last 18 months. Perhaps it was unreasonable to expect Mercedes to compete for victories in 2023, considering their dismal start in Bahrain and the major shift in their development path. However, Aston Martin demonstrated throughout the winter, as has McLaren in recent months, that significant advances can be gained in a very short period. This is not to indicate that Mercedes will follow suit, but the notion that development is impossible with a budget cap, as some have speculated, has rapidly proven wrong. Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, made little secret of his chosen development route for Mercedes following the Hungarian Grand Prix. "We generally have a bigger wing than some of the others," he said. "Like the Red Bulls, for example, but they seem to have more downforce from their floor. We have a lot of work to do. I'm like a broken record. I just gotta keep telling the guys we need to go in that direction. I would like to see that either with this year's car or next year." Most teams are clearly deviating to a similar basic approach, often following the concepts laid forward by Adrian Newey and the Red Bull technical staff. Mercedes even confessed that Lewis Hamilton was unhappy to the team's zero-pod concept over the winter. However, overtaking a team like Red Bull by playing catch-up and beating them at their own game is challenging. But while the Hungarian Grand Prix outcome was far from what many of his supporters had hoped for, Hamilton stated he was far from disappointed because he had been advised on race morning that his car would not be able to compete with Verstappen. "I think it's obvious that we're not the quickest," he said. "We don't have the quickest car, but I'm really proud of myself and the job that we did to get pole position and outperform the world champion and the other two cars that were quicker than us. Today, in the race, it's just reality. The reality is we're not fast enough. They already told me at a strategy meeting this morning I would be at least 5/10 slower than the Red Bull. So the fight was not with Max, but I was hoping that we could fight the McLarens, but then McLaren was too quick for us also." Although Hamilton finished fourth, his team boss Toto Wolff believes Mercedes had the ability to do better, but made a mistake in being too conservative with tyres early on. Wolff said, "We had the second quickest car today, but the result doesn't show it, and that's overall disappointing." Asked why Mercedes did not deliver, Wolff said, "I think we were too careful in bringing the laps in. I think after the stops we lost a lot of time, and it paid off towards the end of the stint because we were miles quicker than everybody else. But it's always a balance, and I believe the balance was a little bit too much in terms of bringing them in." The pole position was impressive, but everyone knows that this year Mercedes has been on this journey of trying to undo some of the wrong decisions that we've taken, according to Lewis Hamilton, and they're starting to see those benefits slowly since the start of 2023. Lewis Hamilton talked on Mercedes' development since the challenging 2022 season after winning pole at the Hungarian Grand Prix. "Look, last year for example, we were nowhere," the Briton said. "There were ups and downs. There was a moment where we were, as I said, George was up here. But I don't think I've been on the front row since 2021. So I've always had belief. I just have that belief that someday if we apply ourselves in the right way, we will get there. I guess it was just a question of how long would that be. And we started this season basically with I'm not going to say it, but it's like the twin sister. It's like the twin of the previous car. Basically, twin sister or brother of the previous year's car. And so, got in it, it felt identical and that was worrying. So we've been on this journey of trying to undo some of the wrong decisions that we've taken, and it's taken far longer than we've ever hoped it would take. But we're starting to see those benefits slowly, and we've still got some big steps that we need to take to really be even more comfortable in the car, to be consistently challenging the front row," Hamilton concluded. Do you feel like Hamilton's feedback at Mercedes is justified? And have Mercedes failed Hamilton in recent years? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Mercedes Trackside Engineering Director Andrew Chauvelin explains why it's so difficult to catch Red Bull, and whether Mercedes, like McLaren or Aston Martin, can make a significant performance leap. "The way the rules are, if you launch a competitive car in a cost cap, it's quite difficult for teams to catch up," Chauvelin said. "Because if you've got a competitive car, you don't need to be throwing updates at it week in, week out. They started in a very good place. And the fact is, our wind tunnel resource is not very different to theirs and not very different to Ferrari's. So that initial performance advantage you start with, and it has come down over the year. But when you look at how big it was in Bahrain and Jeddah, it's always difficult to shut that down in terms of the championship. Aston Martin and McLaren are the two teams who have made significant improvements and are now competing for top spots. Chauvelin was questioned if Mercedes could follow in their footsteps and make a large leap pretty rapidly. It's encouraging because we know that the engine's obviously doing a good job in those cars. We're working hard to try and move forward. I think the step McLaren made was pretty impressive. You can see that they've changed a fair bit on their car. But for us, we do need to close that gap to Red Bull. We're still developing the car. Whether or not we could find half a second that they look to have found, I don't know. That'd be a stretch target, Chauvelin concluded. But Mercedes trackside engineering director Andrew Chauvelin says, "The focus for us is making sure we challenge Red Bull or whoever it is at the front next year." The gains change track to track, Chauvelin said. The front end of the car is a bit more coherent, a bit stronger now, so we're having to work to balance that. But it does look to have gone in the right direction, and our correlation over the last year has been strong, in that we make bits and we race them. We're not putting kits on and off trying to decide whether we've done the right thing. However, look at where Aston Martin were at the start of the year, and then where they've been in some of the recent races. That's only because other people are developing very quickly. It's difficult to gauge the progress when you just look at how the teams stack up, but the fact is, you can see those moves where people do bring updates. We just need to work to try and improve the development rate, but the focus for us is making sure we can challenge Red Bull, or whoever it is at the front next year. So it's a case of balancing that bigger goal with what we can do on this car, and also learning with this car, because if you don't change the car, you don't learn a lot. So a lot of the development is about learning for the future, the Briton concluded. Mercedes is still trying to bring updates during this year, so that could be a big improvement or good baseline for the W14. So recently, Mercedes have been the latest team to use a rear wing trick that is becoming increasingly widespread on the Formula 1 grid. To better regulate airflow in this part of the car, they've used a device that joins the rear wing end plate and the top flaps tip portion differently. The FIA hope to avoid, or at least lessen, some of the aerodynamic deceptions that had occurred in the previous regulation periods. But knowing how much performance can be derived from this area of the rear wing, and the impact it can have on other areas of its design, the teams were never going to sit back and let that lap time slip away. This has led to several design modifications for the end plate, tip section, and flap junction, with the most recent interpretation resulting to the separation of the tip section from the end plate, with a metal support inserted inboard of the outer surface curve instead. Although it may be easy to imagine how the wing may work in the closed position, there is also the performance of DRS to consider, as well as how this new design trend may modify its behavior. Aside from rear wing redesigns, Mercedes had a few more tricks in their sleeves in Hungary. Mercedes added a new front wing dive plane and front wishbone fairing. Both may be termed corrective surgery to improve the new elements that have recently been added to the W14, with a new front suspension arrangement installed at the Monaco Grand Prix that the team has subsequently discovered further aerodynamic advantages from. As part of that upgrade package, the lead arm of the upper wishbone was relocated to a higher location on the chassis, but the fairing has now been redesigned and a kink added to help channel the airflow downstream. Mercedes also changed the shape of their front wing end plates for the British Grand Prix, using a curved leading edge and a more aggressively orientated profile. To further optimize the new flow conditions caused by these alterations, it debuted a new dive plane designed during the Hungarian Grand Prix, which is shorter and more sharply slanted than its predecessor. What are your thoughts on Mercedes' recent developments? And what about Chauvelin's comments? Will they be able to catch up at the start of the next season? And can we count them as podium challengers? Or is this even out of sight for now? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.